Good morning and welcome. I'm Kathy Underwood, the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. Whether the Unitarian Church of Evanston is your spiritual home, or you are seeking comfort and connection in uncertain times, we are grateful you are with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us matters and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. Together, let us remember our oneness, our kinship with one another, and may we hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. There are many links of connection in the comment section below, including credits for readings, to virtual religious education, for donations, and to be added to our email newsletter list. A few announcements this morning. The All Church Zoom meeting will be on Wednesday at 5:30, and we will send a reminder email in the early afternoon with a link. We'll hold a virtual coffee and conversation after this service until 1 p.m. on Zoom. You can find the link in the comments below or in the newsletter. Also today at 12:30 is a workshop with our guest speaker, Reverend Connie Simon. You can find the link below in the comments section. You are invited to attend a workshop on how to use Realm, woohoo, our member and friend database for connection and communication. Adam is offering 2 sessions to help orient people using Realm, one on this Tuesday at 11 a.m., and one on Sunday, March 7th at 1:15 p.m. They're open to all. Check the newsletter for more details. And now, I invite you to get your chalices ready, set a place for yourself and your family as we join in beloved community.
Our opening reading this morning is One Love by Hope Johnson, beloved elder in Unitarian Universalism. She served as the congregational life consultant of the UUA's Central East region and the Southern region. She brought specialties in conflict resolution and multicultural congregational development. She died in November of 2020. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one. Welcome to worship.
Members of the 8th Principal Team light this chalice in Northern Illinois on the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Menominee, Ho-Chunk, Sauk, and Fox, also call this area home. We name these in honor and respect. Please join in saying these words by Reverend Pamela Rumasick, serving the Unitarian Church of Hinsdale. Why community? To remember that one is not a whole number, that we need both roots and wings, that strength comes from relationship and mutuality, that we know life in and through one another. And please join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And please join Amanda Thomas, Director of Music at Second Unitarian, in singing hymn number 1040, Hush.
Please join me in singing hymn number 1040, Hush.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? It sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. It sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Today's Time for All Ages is Finding Your Way, Ethelred Brown, adapted from Janine K. Grossmayer. One morning more than 100 years ago, on the island of Jamaica, a boy named Ethelred Brown went to church. Usually at this church, the people sang their creed, their list of what they believed. But that morning was Easter Sunday, a special Sunday. And so instead of singing the creed, the pastor said one line of it, and the people would repeat it. This is some of what Ethelred heard. We believe the Father is God, the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God. And yet they are not three gods, but one God. This is known as the Trinity. So likewise, the Father is Lord, the Son is Lord, and the Holy Spirit Lord. And yet not three Lords, but one Lord. And Ethelred thought, what? He liked math and he knew how to add. He knew that three wasn't the same as one. How can three things be one thing? How can one thing be three? It didn't make sense to him. So right there, sitting in church, Ethelred decided that he didn't believe that. He couldn't agree with what everyone else in the church was saying. He would have to find his own way. That afternoon, he went to his uncle's house, and on the table was a booklet with the words, "The Lord our God is one God." And Ethelred thought, yes, that makes sense. He borrowed the booklet and took it home to read. That booklet was by the Reverend William Ellery Channing, who was a Unitarian minister in the United States. After reading it in some other books, Ethelred decided he was a Unitarian too. But there were no Unitarian churches in Jamaica, and so Ethelred knew he would have to find his own way. So that's what he did for years and years. He still liked numbers and became an accountant, helping other people keep good track of their money. He got married and he and his wife had 4 children. Then when Ethelred was 32 years old, he decided to become a Unitarian minister and start a Unitarian church in Jamaica. He didn't even know any other Unitarians, but did Ethelred Brown let that stop him? Nope. He found his own way. Since he didn't know any Unitarians, he wrote a letter and addressed it to any Unitarian minister in New York City, and he put it in the mail. Believe it or not, he eventually got an answer to his letter, telling him he had to go to a school in the United States to become a Unitarian minister. Now, Ethelred didn't have much money, and he'd never left Jamaica. But he didn't let that stop him. He found a way. He asked people to give him money. He said goodbye to his wife and his children, then got on a boat to go to the United States. When he finally got to the United States, they didn't let him stay because he didn't have the right papers. Did Ethelred let that stop him? Of course not. He found a way. He went back to Jamaica, fixed his papers, and saved more money. Finally, 3 years after he decided to go, he arrived at the school. He spent 2 years there, learning to be a Unitarian minister, and was ordained in 1912. He was the first Jamaican to go to that school and the very first Black person to become a Unitarian minister. Back then, people of different colors didn't mix. The teachers at the ministerial school told Ethelred that he couldn't be at a church with white people. They would want a white minister. Because he was Black, he had to be a minister in a church with Black people. Except there weren't any Unitarian churches with Black people. So the Unitarian churches didn't think he could be a minister at all. But that didn't stop Ethelred. Nope, he found a way. He went back to his wife and children in Jamaica, and he started a Unitarian church there. It wasn't easy because the church didn't have many people or much money. Unfortunately, he didn't get much help from other Unitarians either. But Ethelred found a way to make his dream of being a Unitarian minister come true. After 8 years, he decided to start another church, this time in the United States. He and his family moved to New York City, and he started the Harlem Community Church in 1920. It wasn't easy there. They still didn't have much money, and they still didn't get much help. His wife became sick, and one of his children died. Besides being a minister, Ethelred had to work long hours at an extra job he didn't like. But somehow, Ethelred found a way. For the next 35 years, Ethelred was the minister at the Harlem Community Church. Over the years, hundreds of people found their way excuse me, to pray and learn, worship and sing, just like we do at our congregation. In fact, one of the songs we sing has a tune named in honor of Reverend Ethelred Brown. It's in our Singing the Living Tradition hymn book, and it's called I'm on My Way. Ethelred Brown always found a way to do what he believed in, and so should we.
I'm on my way, to the freedom land. I'm on my way, to the freedom land. I'm on my way, to the freedom land. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way.
If they say no,
I'll
go anyhow.
If
they say no,
I'll go anyhow.
If they say no,
I'll go anyhow.
I'm on my way. Great God,
I'm on my way. I'm on my way. And I won't turn back. I'm on my way. And I won't turn back.
I'm on my way. And I won't turn back. I'm on my way.
Great God, I'm on my way.
These are the joys and sorrows that have been submitted through the Google form found on our website. Alternatively, if you have trouble finding that form for any reason, just send me an email or one to Reverend Susan Francis. From Sandra Robinson, yesterday on short notice, she traveled at dawn to receive an available extra vaccine in southernmost Illinois. She writes, masked and distanced, I spent time with my 93-year-old mom after 13 and a half COVID complicated months. I'm filled with gratitude. From Trudy Davis, my shoulder replacement surgery went well, and I will be staying at my daughter's in Park Ridge for several weeks. If you would like that address, please contact the office and we'll get it to you so you can send cards to Trudy. The Independence Covenant group is overjoyed this week to learn that Mary Jean Brandt has returned home from a 12-week stay in the hospital and a nursing facility for a near-fatal ruptured appendix followed by a COVID-19 infection. She is doing well with assistance and wants to extend her gratitude for all the cards, phone calls, and expressions of loving care. From Jeannie Rhodes, my cousin, artist Rowena Morrill, 76, died on February 11th, following years of poor health. Morrill was nominated for the Hugo Award for Best Professional Artist in 1982, 83, 84, and 86, and won a British Fantasy Award for Best Artist in 1984. She was nominated for Artist World Fantasy Awards in 81, 82, and 84, and she received the World Fantasy Award for Life Achievement in 2020. What a hard loss. Gay Riceborough writes, my best friend, traveling companion, and only sister, Wendy Griffin, died in her Long Beach, California home on February 12th. I was fortunate to be there with her to spend her last days and say goodbye. And from Claudia Dancing, yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of Sarah Kalick's death. She was the daughter of Bruce Kalick and stepdaughter of Claudia. We remembered her via Zoom together with her husband, siblings, and their children. We will hold a larger gathering when it is safe to do so. And finally, from Michelle Thompson Hay, a week ago Friday, Michael's mother, Lene Hay, made her transition from this life. We are heartbroken that, like millions of others, that we're not able to mourn her loss with our family in person. However, we are so grateful for all of the time we did have with her and that her suffering has ended. We will love her and miss her always. So many losses, friends, so many difficult and lonely, isolating losses, so much grief. We know that these are not the only joys and the only sorrows that live among us and within us and beyond our collective community. Let's take a moment now to read to ourselves the joys and sorrows that are added to the chat this morning. And I invite you to say aloud those who you are holding on your heart in prayer and love and hope for resilience. Let their names gather on the winds and be held in this community that knows no walls. I invite you to join me in this prayer. Source of love, Spirit of life, we collect and hold our joys together in the practice of beloved community, knowing that to recognize goodness, possibility, beauty, and kinship is to bring them into fuller relief and greater expression. We gather and witness our sorrows together as well, knowing that doing so lessens their weight and brings us the courage and the strength to move through them with new learning, new growth, and greater commitment to the well-being of all. Help us to find within, among, and beyond us what we need to persevere, to remain resilient and life-affirming in the midst of a cold, hard winter. May we look ahead to liberation and love on the horizon, and may we struggle and strive to hold steady that view as we journey on. Amen.
UCE remains a vital part of the world and our community. And because we continue to need one another in the blessings of community, we take this time to invite you to give to our shared plate. Today's offering will be shared with Interfaith Action of Evanston, whose mission is bringing communities of faith and spirit together to serve people who are hungry and homeless. You can text to give, send in a check, or give from our website. If you send in a check, please indicate in the memo line if your check is for the shared plate, pledge, capital campaign, or some other giving. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
Before our reading this morning, I am so delighted to introduce our special guest preacher, Reverend Connie Simon. Connie and I met while in seminary together at Meadville Lombard Theological School. In fact, the school had a practice of pairing up existing students with incoming students for mentorship and guidance, and I had the good fortune of being Reverend Connie's mentor. One conversation with her made me realize that mentoring her was a little bit laughable. She came to seminary with so much wisdom, insight, and perseverance. It was a little intimidating, or it would have been if she wasn't also such a warm and loving person. When several of our members attended Midwest Leadership School virtually this fall, they were introduced to Reverend Connie through her presentation of Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist history, particularly as it relates to systemic white supremacy and our struggles in the journey of anti-racism and our shortcomings. These participants in the leadership school were so blown away that they wanted to invite her to work with us, and she has graciously and enthusiastically accepted our invitation. She is dedicated to advancing the work in congregations of reflecting on our history and what it means as we move forward in the practice of beloved community. She is the minister serving the First Unitarian Universalist Church in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she is also a historian following in the spiritual and intellectual tradition of Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed. Many of you have already signed up for the workshop that will follow this sermon this afternoon and the second part on Thursday evening. But if you haven't registered, you're still welcome to attend. So click on that link below. Now, this reading selected by Reverend Connie, entitled "It's Hard Work" by Rosemary Bray McNatt, the current president of Starr King Theological School for the Ministry in Berkeley, California. Why are we still talking about inclusivity and diversity when we have done so little to make them real? Why are we still looking pained about the lack of diversity in the denomination? Because diversity, inclusivity is terribly hard, terribly uncomfortable, definitely unsettling, and often quite frustrating. What I know about being inclusive, crossing from culture to culture, learning the language of diversity, is that it's the work of a lifetime. It's hard to accept people who are not like you, who don't talk the way you do, or believe the things you believe, or dress or vote as you do. It's even harder to appreciate them for the things about them that are not like you, to find them interesting and fun, to enjoy the learning that's part of the experience, and to acknowledge, finally, that you may have to agree to disagree. The truth is this: if there is no justice, there will be no peace. We can read Thoreau and Emerson to one another, quote Rilke and Alice Walker and Howard Thurman, and think good and noble thoughts about ourselves. But if we cannot bring justice into the small circle of our own individual lives, we cannot hope to bring justice to the world. And if we do not bring justice to the world, none of us is safe, and none of us will survive. Nothing that Unitarian Universalists need to do is more important than making justice real, here, where we are. Hard as diversity is, it is our most important task. Before we hear from Reverend Connie, I'd like you to enjoy this piece offered by musical artist and choral leader Melanie Demore.
Hello, UU family. I'm going to sing a song with you called Shine on Me. It's an amazing spiritual that anybody can sing. And in these days when the things that we're dealing with, the feeling separate and all of that, and things seem so hard, This is one of those songs that you just throw your head back, put it in your medicine kit. All you have to do is ask. And here's how it goes. Shine on me, oh shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me, yes shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Lift me up, oh lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh lift me up, yes lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh hold me close, yes hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse hold me close, yes hold me close, oh hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse please hold me close, oh shine on me, yes shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me, yes shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me.
I'm going to start with a confession. I'm a history nerd. Have been since I was a kid. When I'm not working on a sermon, it's not uncommon for me to spend a Saturday night watching a documentary about some obscure event in history. I find it fascinating. Unfortunately, my family doesn't always share my passion. I see their eyes glaze over when I offer my latest random historical fact. There are a few reasons why I think history excites me so much. First, it's interesting, even more so when it's personal. I've been working on our family history. My great-great-great-uncle on my mother's side fought in the Civil War and was a member of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. My great-great-great-grandfather on my father's side was an enslaved man who followed his owner's son into the Confederate Army, not as a soldier, but as a servant. He was buried in his Confederate uniform. The stories that I have uncovered have exceeded my wildest imagination about both their lives and several other interesting characters. I study history because it's informative and it helps to explain how we came to be as a society. Who built and invented what? Why did they do it? What was life like before cars or air travel or computers or food preservation? How did we develop our understandings of intangible ideals such as freedom and democracy? How did wars start? How did religion play a factor in the running of governments and in the migration of society? What are the roots of racism and oppression? History is also instructive. By teaching us where we came from, history can provide guidance on where we're going. By showing us the benefits of repeating a particular course of action, by showing us what not to do, or by inspiring us to create an entirely new path. Indiana University professor Henry Glassy wrote that history tangles the past with the present in webs of fact. Its practice is to treat things that exist here and now as though they're concerned the past and to use them in new compositions designed to equip people for their trip into the future. And I read this in a University of Wisconsin history bulletin. To study history is to study change, to use a range of methods and analytical tools to answer questions about the past and to reconstruct the diversity of past human experience. How profoundly people have differed in their ideas, their institutions, and their cultural practices, how widely their experiences have varied by time and place, and the ways they've struggled while inhabiting a shared world. But here's the catch. Whose history do we study? Who gets to decide what parts of history are important? We've heard the conversations about what our children learn in school. Do they learn all parts of history? How do they learn these things? What stories are they told? Well, the same is true in Unitarian Universalism. What stories are we told? Who gets to decide what's important? When I first came into Unitarian Universalism 10, 12 years ago, all I heard about in terms of our history was Emerson, Channing, Parker, and Thoreau, with an occasional reference to heretics Francis David and Michael Servetus. I also heard that we, Unitarians and Universalists, were great abolitionists who always promoted racial justice. And I heard that we marched in Selma and were on the forefront of the civil rights movement. If you come to our workshop this week, you'll find out that 2 of those 3 things aren't entirely true. But that's just a teaser. What I did not hear about was anyone who looked like me. I completed my ministerial internship at the Unitarian Society of Germantown. I loved my time there and still hold them very dearly in my heart. There's a plaque next to the pulpit there that says, "The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached from this pulpit on December 11, 1960. The historical significance of standing every Sunday in the same place Dr. King stood more than 60 years ago was never lost on me. It filled me with an incredible sense of awe and pride and humility that still takes my breath away. And I must add, it also fills me with a twinge of sadness that has inflicted 1,000 tiny little cuts on my heart and caused me to shed many a tear. Why did I cry? Well, because people who look like me, Black people, were not always welcome in our Unitarian and Universalist congregations, much less in our pulpits. Dr. Samuel A. Eliot, the first president of the American Unitarian Association and one of the greatest administrators our denomination has ever had, once referred to Blacks as more nearly brutes than anything I have ever known. He and many of his contemporaries believed that Blacks lacked the intellectual capacity to grasp Unitarianism. Eliot's attitude would soften over the years. In a way, he would later write, "As to the darkies, I can't get enough of them. Our men are above average, for they can read and write, but such happy-go-lucky, merry, shiftless rascals as they all are. I never get tired of listening to them. I've seen a great deal of them, for they work best with a white man bossing them all the while, and I have had that duty several times." I know. That was almost 100 years ago. Let's move forward to the 1950s. Dana Greeley was president of the American Unitarian Association. We were still about 10 years away from becoming Unitarian Universalists. Speaking about David Eaton, a seminarian at Boston University, Greeley said, "Personally, I'd love to have you, but I'm afraid we couldn't settle you." Congregations were not ready for a Black minister. Fast forward another 50 years to December 2015. During a seminar on the ministerial settlement process, in response to a question about my career prospects, UUA Transitions Director Keith Cron bravely and honestly and lovingly warned me that a lot of congregations say they're ready for a minister of color, but they're really not. At my installation in October 2018, Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel welcomed me into the ranks of parish ministers. She pointed out that at the time there were only 7 Black women serving as lead or solo ministers of Unitarian Universalist churches. 7. There are more than 1,000 congregations in the Unitarian Universalist Association. That's a big ouch. When I look around our faith, I don't see a lot of people who look like me. And years ago, I couldn't name many from our history. I knew of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper and David Eaton, but not many others. It wasn't until I took Mark Morrison Reed's African American history class at Meadville Lombard Theological School that I learned more of the truth. He stood before us one day, arms outstretched, tears streaming down his face, and he said, "We were always there." He listed the names of Unitarians, Universalists, and UUs that I'd never heard of. We were always there. He cried for them, many of them all but lost to history, their contributions, their participation, their very existence in this denomination, all but forgotten. He cried for them all that day. We all did, and we still do. We cry for Joseph Jordan, the first African American to be ordained as a Universalist minister and founder of First Universalist Church of Norfolk and a day school that at its peak served 90 to 100 children per week. We cried for Peter Humphreys Clark, educator, abolitionist, writer, and speaker who became a member of my congregation, the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati, in 1868 and was its first and only Black member until 1952. We cry for William Jackson, a Baptist minister who wanted to convert to Unitarianism and sought to be a Unitarian minister, only to be turned away by the American Unitarian Association during its annual meeting in 1860. After being snubbed by the AUA, he stayed a Baptist and left Unitarianism behind. We were always there, and many are still here. Even after losing a significant number of Black UUs over the empowerment controversy in the late 1960s, we're still here. All of us, Black people, Indigenous people, Latinx folks, people of color, transgender folks, and disabled people. We're all here, and we always have been. attending our congregations, serving our congregations in all capacities. And it's time for our stories to be told. It's time for our part in Unitarianism, Universalism, and Unitarian Universalist history to be recognized. In a 2009 TED Global presentation, author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie warned of the danger of a single story. Raised in Nigeria, she tells of growing up reading British and American literature and accepting as the norm the characters and the norms of those stories. It wasn't until she discovered Nigerian writer Achebe and Guinean author Kamara Lai that she realized people like me could also exist in literature. She says, this knowledge saved me from a single story of literature. And armed with this knowledge, she began to view the world through a different perspective and realize the danger inherent in the single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. This single story is defined by those in power. How they are told, who tells them, when they're told, how many stories are told are really dependent on power. It's time for us to dispel that single story. It's time for us to stop saying, for example, that we are a white denomination. That statement is unfair and it's untrue. It's untrue because, well, hello, I'm right here. I am a member of the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia and a fellowshipped minister in our denomination. If I'm here, we can't be an all-white denomination. That statement is also untrue because it ignores the existence of the Black and brown people who have been part of this denomination and Unitarianism and Universalism before that, since their earliest days. It's unfair to the UUA itself and to groups like Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, Drum, Diverse Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries, and others, and the work they're doing to dismantle white supremacy culture in Unitarian Universalism. We have to do better at telling more stories and not just relying on a single story of our history. We need to hear more than one perspective. We praise Samuel Eliot for saving the AUA, but his attitudes toward Black people and women were horrible. We talk about the Unitarians who fought against slavery, but rarely mention folks like Massachusetts minister Reverend Orville Dewey, who said, "If a fugitive came to me, professed his divine right to be free, and asked for help, I would reply, your right to be free is not absolute, unqualified, irrespective of all consequences. If my espousal of your claim is likely to involve your race and mine together in disasters infinitely greater than your personal servitude, then you ought not to be free. In such a case, personal rights ought to be sacrificed to the general good." Why don't we tell these stories from our history? Is it because they aren't flattering? Is it because they don't fit the narrative we tell ourselves about Unitarians and Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists always being on the side of freedom, liberty, and justice for all? I think of how often in the last couple years I've heard the phrase, "that's not who we are," or "that's not who I am," in response to criticism for some untoward or heinous act. We just heard it last month in conversations about the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Politicians and commentators kept saying, "that's not who we are as Americans." Well, I hate to tell you this, but clearly it is. Maybe not all of us, but surely some of us. We can keep telling ourselves over and over again, but the truth is the truth. Ignoring parts of our history doesn't make them go away. It doesn't make them untrue. Chimamanda says that telling a single story flattens our experience. I like that phrase. It flattens our experience. It limits our knowledge. It inhibits our imagination and stunts our creativity. The way we've been telling our story perpetuates white privilege and white supremacy culture. It dismisses folks and erases their very existence. Now, I know this is hard for some to hear. I value the contributions of Emerson, Parker, Channing, and Thoreau as much as anyone. In fact, I'm the editor of the Dictionary of Unitarian and Universalist Biography and a very proud member of the UU History and Heritage Society board. I teach UU history, but I know that there's more to our story than just Emerson, Parker, Channing, and Thoreau. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn about them. I'm just saying that they can't be the whole story. We have to go deeper. We have to uncover the ways in which these individuals existed, these people that we have made larger than life. We need to look at how they interacted with their world. And I think that when we do, we'll discover that there are so many more interesting stories to be told. So many more things to be gleaned, experiences to be shared and understood. So much more that we can be taught about what we need to do to move forward and create justice in our faith and in our larger world. I hope that you'll join us for our workshop this week. Perhaps you'll hear a story that you've never heard before, or discover new ways to think about stories you've heard many times. Most importantly, I hope that you'll see there's so much more to our history than a single story, and you'll embrace the diversity and richness of those stories and all they bring to our chosen faith.
As the eighth principal team extinguishes the chalice, please join in saying these words. Though the flame is extinguished, we carry with us the warmth of community, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment until we are together again.
As our benediction, I share the words of Reverend Alicia Ford, the Unitarian Universalist Association's director of the International Office. When we pause to remember who we are, companions on this grand experiment called life, when we take a moment to shed the ways we have been carefully taught, to lead from fear, to punish the poor, to persecute those who don't look like we do, to deny the rights to those who love, to believe that we are separate, that some people are superior to others. When we take a moment to shed all of that and hear our stories, hear and see each other into existence, into community, when we take a moment to embrace the practice, to practice a different way of being, when we answer the call of love, then we are living into the promise of building the world we dream about. May we continue to build with courage, with curiosity, and mutual care. Go in peace.